right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. The talk's on avoiding problems when hiring and working with freelancers. Just to let you know up front, the presentation's a little text heavy. There'll be a PDF available after with all of the slides and everything. So let's go ahead and get started. About myself, I've run my own ISV since 99. My main software is Bannermaker Pro. I've been an ASP member since 2000. I'm a former technical arbitrator at vWorker. vWorker got sold last year to Freelancer, and now I'm also an arbitrator at a company called NetArb, which does Atlantis arbitrations. This talk is basically about the process of hiring a freelancer and just common problems that you see. I want to show you how to recognize good freelancers before you hire them, and just common problems that you'll see and ways to prevent issues from happening, and if problems do pop up, how to prevent them. First, we're just going to walk through a typical project and just kind of go step by step through the process, and I'll highlight some things that you can do to help yourself, and then we'll look at the common problems after that. So I need to go into a little bit about arbitration first. Arbitration is basically project divorce court. It's used by the major freelance sites when a client and a freelancer want to stop working together and the money's been escrowed. An arbitrator is brought in to determine who gets the funds. So we have to look at the project, and we have to look at all the different communications and try to figure out, okay, who's responsible? Did the freelancer do the work and the client's being unreasonable, or did the freelancer not do the work and the client should get his money back? So the vast majority of projects don't come into technical arbitration. When I was at vWorker, only 2% were in technical arbitration at any time. In 2 years, I arbitrated over 1,000 projects. I've seen many, many ways that projects have gone bad. I think I've seen almost everything, but I'm always surprised, unfortunately. Common reasons that projects go into arbitration, a lot are just kind of contract issues. What did you actually agree to build, and what were those features supposed to be? Disputes regarding changes, if a change needs to be made, how does that get communicated, and who's supposed to do it? Is that part of the project or not? Communication issues, people will disappear and not respond, or respond poorly. Poor quality of the work. It's actually not that high reason in arbitration. Usually that means if it's really poor quality, the freelancer usually knows this and doesn't go to arbitration. At Elance, you have to pay to go into arbitration. So if the freelancer knows that it's poor quality, they're not even going to do it. They're just going to cut their losses. Insufficient progress is another reason. You've been working on this project for 6 months. It was supposed to be due 3 months ago. There's still not enough work being done. And finally, copyright issues don't come up too often, but they can be a real pain in the butt when they do happen. Just to kind of start off, what can you outsource? And the answer is pretty much everything. I know a lot of you are, kind of one-man shops like I am. That means you're the developer, you're the website person, you're the marketing person, you're the salesperson, you're the graphics person, and it's really very difficult to be all of those people and do them well. And being able to send work off to freelancers who do these type of things is a great way to get good quality work done that you can't do or don't have time to. That link down the bottom at Freelancer is a good list. I mean, to see all the different jobs that freelancers do. It's just, there's literally hundreds and hundreds of different types of jobs. It's not just limited to programming or graphics. Things like translation, human resources, data entry, things like that. Where can you hire freelancers? The 3 big sites are Odesk, Elance, and Freelancer. And that's this industry is really going under a lot of changes. vWorker got bought out by Freelancer. Freelancer just turned down a $400 million buyout last week. There's still sites like Fiverr and 99 Designs and CrowdSprings and Craigslist, and you can hire your neighbor, and just anywhere you can hire a freelancer or a contractor, you can just follow these steps. So let's begin. What's the process? So basically, you post a project on an outsourcing service, you receive bids and interview and select a freelancer. And once you select them, work begins, and you escrow the money, and if everything goes well, you accept the work and give out the money, and everybody's happy. There's 3 different types of projects before we post, and you need to decide what type that you want to do. The first is fixed price, and each of these types have their pluses and minuses. They're great for smaller projects, say, I need a small website, and I'm willing to pay, $500, and, that small website gets done. Great for small stuff. For bigger projects, it becomes more of an issue, because what happens is that if you need to make changes, you have a fixed contract that you're working on. And now if you want to say, oh, I really want to change this, the freelancer said, hey, I already did this, this is a new project that you want to do, let's do that, and then it leads to a lot of angst on both parties. If you're hiring for big projects, I recommend hourly. It's better. If you haven't worked with someone hourly, the major freelance sites have ways to see their work and keep track of them. If you're not working with somebody and don't have time to keep track of them, you hire them for like maybe a small fixed price, see if they can do the work, and then work longer after that. Contests are also another great way for graphics work. You post a contest, say I'll pay $500 for someone to design my new logo, and you can get just really good work done by just really different designs. If you're looking for different varieties, contests are a great way to go. I've actually seen this done for programming projects. I really don't recommend it, because folks like to steal from each other. It might be a way to get work done for software if you're like in a hurry. Kind of first one gets the prize sort of thing, but generally I don't recommend them for software. So once you decide your type, what you want to do is create your project summary. And a project summary is just a description of the work to be done. What you need to keep in mind is that it's also part of the contract and needs to specify everything, who installs what restrictions you need. The problem is the freelancers place their bids on this information, and if you don't have everything in that project summary, their bids are going to be off, and it's going to lead to problems later on the road. Like I said, be very specific. A detailed summary helps poor freelancers, but it also attracts good freelancers. The problem is you'll get someone, if you do like a poor summary, you'll get a bad freelancer who doesn't know to ask more questions, to get more information, to make sure that they can do the work. A detailed summary helps prevent them and say, oh, they may not be bad, they just may not know what questions to ask. So being detailed, helps you out. And finally, I'm going to harp on this, is set them up for success. Before they accept, make sure they have everything they need, and make sure that they understand the work. So here's an example of a project summary that I did. My software makes banner ads and buttons, and basically this is just a quick summary that I did. I said I needed 120. I broke down what sizes I needed. They need to be the format, what I was looking for in them, the different types, and explained what sort of thing I needed. And then all work must be original, which is very important in graphics that we'll talk about later. And this was very short, but this explained everything that I needed and what I expected from the freelancer. So I was going to keep going here. Okay, so good project summaries contain all the information needed for the contractor to make a good informed bid. You need to specify the technology required. For example, if you're doing a website, which do you want? HTML? Do you want .NET? PHP? That sort of thing. You need to specify that up front. If you don't know, ask, and the freelancers will hopefully respond back with, yeah, okay, this is for this project, this is what I would like to do, and that sort of thing. If you're not sure of the style, say you're looking for a website or graphics, and you're not sure of the style, give them examples of what you're looking for, and you just want to give them as much information as possible. You want to explain what features you need. Do you need e-commerce? Do you need a contact form? Whatever that you need. Don't use vague adjectives like, I need an attractive website, unless you're going to negotiate this up front as to what looks attractive, because beauty's in the eye of the beholder, and what you think might be easy to use may not be what the freelancer thinks. When you post, think of ways to test the project, and this will help you make a good project summary, because that's going to break the project down into parts. All aspects of the work should be discussed before work begins. So here's some examples of some bad project summaries. That these are pretty much ones taken from arbitration. For example, someone will say, I need a logo. Give me some more information here. Throw me a bone. What type of logo do you need? I need a Facebook clone for $100. People will bid on this, surprisingly. And actually, this may actually be done. You can actually do that. You may not get all the features you want, but there are scripts and things out there. I thought that was actually pretty interesting. The next one, I need a 5-page website that works on the web, mobile, and tablets. It looks okay, but it doesn't explain, is that one website? Is it 3 websites? What needs to be done? A freelancer may take that and go and make 3 different sites, or just make one, and if it can show up on your browser and the phone, that qualifies as far as they're concerned. So need to be specific. And this is one of my all-time favorite lines. This was from a fixed price project, and anything I forgot. He was just making changes, left and right. He'd change stuff, then change it back, and the freelancer just, I don't know how he just didn't just kill him, because he was just absolutely awful. That may work for an hourly project, but you would pay lots and lots of money if you're not going to do the design up front, and anything I forgot. So vague requirements lead to assumptions that don't necessarily agree, and this is what happens to bad projects. So after you create your project summary, you need to get bids. And once you post your project, you'll receive the bids. One thing to watch out for are generic bids. Bids that say, hey, yes, I can do the work. I've read your project summary. I can do this. Very generic. What happens is there are lots of groups that go through and just kind of try to get every project available, and then decide whether they can do it or not later. And typically you have to write to lots of different projects to get people to talk to, and that's when you're just trying to engage the person. They're just is basically project spam, and you should ignore them, because generally those folks aren't very good. Bid amounts, you'd be very surprised if you've not placed a project. The bid amounts are just all over the place. You can get anywhere from 3 times. You pay something that should be about $500, and you'll get bids for $50 all the way to $3,000. And the quality is not correlated whatsoever with the bid amount, and it's all over the place. You might get bids from Indians that are way higher than the Americans or the Argentinians or whoever. It's It's all very interesting once you get the bids. Bid comments are very, very important, in my opinion. I consider them the window into the soul. You want freelancers who know how to place comments and then ask good questions and look like they've looked at your project summary, they know what they can do, and now they're asking questions over and making sure that this is what you're looking for, things like that. Bid comments, very, very important. So trying to find good freelancers, I kind of came up with this four good attributes, and one is communication. How well do they communicate? Very, very important. Availability. Do they have time to complete the project? You may have the best freelancer who's got great skills and experience and they communicate well, but if he's got 10 projects in front of you, this isn't going to help you whatsoever. So you need to make sure that they're available to do the work. Skills, does the freelancer have the necessary skills to do the job? And this can actually be kind of difficult to find out. If they're trying to create a web page, do they have what those particular skills that you're looking for? Experience is the final one, and it's also very important. Have they developed similar projects before? If they've developed similar projects, you have a good chance of success because, hey, they've done it before, they can do the same thing for you. So here's an example of a profile, and I just grabbed this one at random off of Elance. And all of the big freelance sites, Freelancer, Odesk, Elance, they all have very similar information that they can give on a tons and tons of information, and some of it's useless and some of it's not. The first one I want to highlight is the overall bid. This is completely useless if you are hiring freelancers. Basically what happens is, all the freelance sites, want to make their developers look good, and what happens is, it becomes like Lake Wobegon, where all of the freelancers on this site are above average. So, the ratings kind of go, if you complete a project, you give them, a 5 out of 5. If you have some trouble, you get a 4. If the project doesn't get completed and you guys part ways, they don't get rated if they don't get paid. So you're not seeing those numbers. You're not seeing, he may have done, 5 projects did great, but he's got 30 that he didn't complete and didn't get paid on, and his rating should be way, way lower, but you're not going to see that. And also, if they do actually start getting poor ratings, they close their accounts, open new ones, and they start over. They're not supposed to. The freelance sites try to find them, but it can be very difficult. So don't use that overall rating. Better items are the top arrow there is the total number of projects. The total number of projects is a much better example of experience. If you've done someone who's done 77 projects, like I think this person's done, they're going to have. They've seen this work before, they've done it, much better indicator. Another great indicator are reading the job histories. A lot of them just say, especially for 5-star, good worker, would work with them again, that sort of thing. But sometimes you'll see stuff in there like, this is the most horrible person ever. You'll see 10, this is the best programmer ever, then this is the programmer from hell. And you just kind of read them. They're about like Amazon comments versus YouTube comments from from what I can gather. You kind of take some with a grain of salt. Some people just don't get along, and so an occasional bad rating, you shouldn't disqualify anybody. But job history, very important. I kind of drew up this matrix here, and this kind of just to explain what's going on. And like I said, the first one, overall rating is completely useless. The number of projects is great for experience. The client feedback is you'll see their skills, their experience, and their communication. The clients will explain, what if they had problems, what the problems were. Number of jobs in progress. Some freelance sites give you this information, some do not. You may have to ask this. So that can be very important. Make sure that they have time to work on your project. Some sites also talk about the repeat hire rate, and this kind of changes for different industries, so you kind of have to compare them. Like if you're looking for PHP programmers, you'll have to compare different PHP programmers on that site versus graphics work, which may or may not have a different repeat hire rate. The country of origin, where they are, has absolutely no bearing whatsoever on quality. Absolutely none at all. I always think people think American programmers are good. I'm like, I work with American programmers. They're not all good. Listed skills kind of explains what skills they like, but you're not necessarily sure what sort of experience they have. Self-assessed ratings, sometimes the sites will have, all right, I think I'm a 10 out of 10 PHP developer, but you have no basis, and they have no basis to compare it to other people. So that's totally useless. Some sites have skill tests, but you also have to take, that's a better indicator, but again, you kind of have to look at it as a detective. Skill tests can be, bought, they can be, taken by somebody else. You're not necessarily sure that freelancer did that. And it's the same thing with portfolio. They may have a great portfolio, but did they actually do it? It's tough to say. And you kind of have to put all this information together and make your best guess. Bid amount, again, as I said, it has no bearing on anything. You can have someone who's never done work before try to charge way too much over other stuff, and think, well, he's charged more, it means more quality. No. And the same thing with the skill amount. You may have someone who's charging a really low amount, but they might actually do great work. You just never know what their situation is. Bid comments are obviously a sign of good communication, and then just any other communication that you have with them. Like I said, you may have to ask about availability because it may not be shown. Next, in a profile, you want to look at red flags. New freelancers are a red flag. If they don't have much for job history, you obviously don't know what their skills are. Everyone has to start somewhere, but just remember, with new freelancers, you should be getting a discount because they've got no history as to what they've done. So you have to make sure that they try to get together from their list as to, do they have good communication and skills, and try to come up and make sure that they can do the job. Poor initial bid comments I've talked about earlier, and that's basically, just look for spammers. A large number of projects in progress is going to be a sign of just they're not going to be available, or there's going to be communication problems and things because they're going to be swapping between projects. Poor repeat hire rate is obviously a red flag. A large number of unrelated skills is also a red flag. I'm someone, I'm a one-man shop, so I do lots of things. I don't do them all really well. And someone who's listing, and this is just kind of individuals who are listing a lot of unrelated stuff, is kind of a red flag. Now, you may have groups that do have, they may have a graphics person and, different website developers that specialize in different things, and that's fine. But you should check that out and make sure that these are all different people and not just one person who's doing everything. If you're asking questions and they don't directly answer the question, you ask something specific and they don't respond to that specific question, don't hire them. They may just not be trying not to say no and trying to divert from that fact. Dead projects are also a bad sign, and it's tough because you have to really scroll through the job history to see stuff that still says I'm working on something, and nothing's happened for a year. You're not working on it. The two sides have most likely gone separate ways. This is a dead project. Don't know what happened, but this is a sign that they haven't gotten paid for something. I'm just going to go through. I've got tips for hiring different types. For graphics freelancers, make sure that They should have portfolios. Make sure that there's no obvious fakes or clip arts or third-party work. That's bad. If logos, if there are dissimilar designs, this can be a red flag. Generally, if you're doing logos, people have a style that they use. Just like with painters, if you're looking at a Van Gogh, you can tell that from a Picasso. And while logos aren't, they're kind of works of art, and they're going to have the style of that artist making the logo, and they're going to have very likely a very consistent theme to that. So you need to look, if you're seeing just all kind of happy puppies and then death metal stuff, it's in their stuff, maybe not. And finally, if their delivered work doesn't match the quality of their previous work, that's a red flag. You'll see that in arbitrations. They've got this great portfolio, and you get the work, and it's barely recognizable stick figures. Like, wait a minute, what happened here? This doesn't match. You've got this, and this doesn't match that. So, tips for software coders, as we all are. Most of us are software folks. Double their estimates because they are big liars, including myself. Make sure that they're asking intelligent questions about the work to be completed. This has always been a good sign for me. If they've got samples of work that they've done previously, do check them out. For SEO and writers, check their previous writing samples. Don't hire folks without previous writing samples. If they've got previous writing samples, read them. If they've got grammatical errors all over, do not hire them. Make sure English is their native language if you're hiring for that language. If there are grammar mistakes in their replies, don't hire them. And again, as with graphics work, make sure that their writing samples match their deliverables. If they've got great writing samples and then their deliverables don't match, hey, what's going on here? For SEO, this has changed so much. Make sure you know exactly what they're doing. If they're adding links, see where they're adding them. Make sure you know what they're doing. You don't want to get stuff flagged, and check it out. Make sure that what they're doing is also what Google suggests. You don't want black hat stuff coming back and getting your site hidden on Google. All right, so once you've done all that and you've now hired your freelancer, it's time to begin work. And again, I'm going to say this again. Set them up for success. Make sure they've got everything they need before you accept the bid, including specific requirements. If you're going to be unavailable, make sure they know that. If they're going to be unavailable, make sure that you know that when they will be out. Always set a deadline, even if you don't need it. You may be competing with other projects that the freelancer is doing. And if they don't have a deadline on yours may get pushed down the list and keeps getting pushed down the list. If you have a deadline, that gives them something that they have to complete by and kind of keeps it up within their, in their mind. So always set a deadline. Always maintain communication. Not hearing for a while from a freelancer means that they might be working on other stuff. Just a quick email. Hey, how's it going? Is there anything you need from me? That's all you need to send. That puts the onus on them to respond back to you. It makes them more responsive. It brings the project back into their focus. Make sure that they're showing you the work. You may want to set milestones to show me it after, once you've completed this page or this feature, and that way you can see progress going on as it's going. Watch for changes to what's being delivered. If you're looking for a specific style and it's not in that style, it's easier to change stuff up ahead than weeks later. And this last point is very important, especially for arbitrations. Always summarize conversations on site. What we see is people have communications, changes get made, they talk on Skype or have a chat session, and changes get made, they don't follow up on that. There's nothing to go back to where a client can say, look, this is where we agreed, and this is where we agreed to change it to do this, and you didn't do this. We set that back 2 weeks ago. You said you would do it. Just always summarize all conversations on site. Just again, just has to be real quick. Just, hey, good chat with you last night. This is what we discussed. We decided to change this page to something else. If I missed anything, let me know. And especially the sentence, if I miss anything, let me know. It gives the onus to them to, if you misremembered something, to say, no, we changed it to something else. This way they can't come back to you 2 weeks later and say, oh, I never agreed to that. Well, I asked you 2 weeks ago, did you, to make sure that I didn't misremember it. So that's always a good thing to do. When you're testing, one thing I see in arbitration is, who's responsible for testing the work. I always get clients who think, I don't have to test the work, that's their job. No, it's not. You're the one who's going to be using it. You need to make sure that it does what it does and what you need to do to accept it. Freelancers are kind of better at functional testing. If you give them a 5-page website, they're going to make 5 pages. What they're not going to test is how those pages interact, and if you go from one to the other, you need to make sure that the workflow is correct, and that's the type of testing that you're going to be better at than what the freelancer is. So you just keep that in mind when you're testing. If you're testing a common issue, and for developers here, I know you know this. You send the work to the client, and it doesn't work on their system. So if it doesn't do that, good things to do: take a screenshot, take a movie of the error. You can show them. Use screen sharing software like TeamViewer to step through the project together, so you can kind of see what's going on. That helps eliminate a lot of the problems. If you have a lot of changes that need to be made, number them so that you can refer to them later. Just say, all right, here's 10 things that I found. Number 1, 2, 3, 4, and that way you can. The freelancer has a list of things that they have to do, and then once they do them, you have a list of things that you've numbered that you can go back and test to make sure that they've done them. So, and also very important is test on all operating systems and browsers, and that should also be part of the project summary. You shouldn't get to, everyone thinks they're done, and the freelancer thinks, oh, I thought this was only had to work on Internet Explorer and not Firefox and Chrome. You need to make sure that's set up properly, and when you're testing, you need to make sure that that's done as well. So before you accept the work, test. Make sure that the software works in your environment. If it has to be installed on a website, you may want them to do it. If you want something different, make sure you put that as part of the contract and the project summary. Make sure you get all the source files and check them. That goes for any graphics work, that goes for any source websites, and it doesn't matter. Make sure you get them all. Not getting source files are a huge red flag, because that means they might have gotten them from somewhere else. For example, this is a common issue with graphics work. They'll grab, they're supposed to do original work. They deliver something, you think it looks great. Where's your PSD? Oh, I lost it. Or they give you a PSD that's got one layer with everything on it, where it looks like it's been copy and pasted. That's a sign that you may need to look and see if it's somewhere else. If you're concerned about copyright issues, make sure that you're using third-party items, they're not being used without permission. This can, like in Delphi, what can happen is the freelancer can use components that they've purchased, but if you need to redo the work down the road, you may have to purchase some very expensive components that you don't have. So that's something that you need to take into account. Here's a list of kind of common problems, and we discussed those a little bit early. Contract, what's the contract? Changes, communication, cultural differences, I'm going to discuss client issues with freelancers, freelancers issues with clients, and then kind of copyright issues, or just kind of the list of kind of common problems here. Contract issues, and a lot of it is, hey, what's the contract? The contract is everything. This is kind of a boilerplate that we use at vWorker. It's all the information on the project page, title, description, compatibility, all the amendments that were agreed to by both parties. Please note that it states agreed to by both parties, because a freelancer may change stuff, but if they didn't get your permission to, that's not part of the contract. And we'll discuss that a little bit more. Things that aren't part of the contract, something you meant to put in. Oops, something I forgot. To go back to that, that's not part of the contract if you forgot it. Anything, if you kind of communicate it off-site, at vWorker, we stated that we're not looking at off-site communication. This happens at Elance too. We don't look at those. If it's on-site, it's part of the contract. Even if the freelancer said off-site that they didn't agree to it. So that's something that you need to be aware of. And anything that was not agreed to be done by both parties. And again, I'll stress the importance of this, get everything in writing. If you have a phone call, summarize it in writing so both sides have an understanding and they have something that they can refer to later. Here's an example of a contract. The freelancer says, hey, I need a 5-page website done in PHP. The freelancer responds, I can do this in Perl. And the client accepts it with no further discussion. What's the contract here? What's that? Either page website in Perl. Well, what will happen is like I said, both parties have to agree to the changes. And the client, I guess the question that's going to happen is, did the client agree to this change by accepting the bid? And that's something in arbitration that I'd have to decide. It could be the case the client said, hey, I didn't see that, I just accepted it, and I didn't get that email, that sort of thing. Stuff like this is crazy. In most cases, the freelancer would be stuck if they did it in Perl. But the freelancer could come back and say, look, he saw it, he accepted it, and we discussed it later on in Perl. He never said anything, and it might go the other way. But this is kind of a bad example. Okay. Communication difficulties. They're not following directions. You say, hey, make this change. They don't do it. As I discussed before, give a numbered list. If they start jumping around the list, have them work it in order, and then just be very firm. If they can't do the work, stop working. Put it into arbitration. Do what you have to do. If they're not following directions and they can't, it's a sign they can't do the work. Freelancer not responding. Sometimes they have different holidays and things, and if they don't explain, but if it's an hourly project, stop working. The freelance sites have ways to stop the project immediately, and that will genuinely get their attention really fast. So do that if they're not responding. If they're not showing the work, that can be difficult. As a developer, you may be able to create the front end real quick, but there's all kind of database and other stuff that you're doing behind the scenes that you're trying to get to work, which is kind of the GUI is just kind of the tip of the iceberg. So you have to plan for that, and you just need to be able to see that work is being done, and milestones are kind of a way to help with that. I just want to talk about cultural issues just kind of real quick. Cultural issues kind of manifest themselves as communication issues, and some cultures it's impolite to say no. If you give additional work, they may not agree to it, but they may not say no, but it results in a kind of a strained working environment. And then you can have the total opposite problem where the freelancer has no problem saying no, and then what they think of you for asking for additional work. These issues are really an issue with newer freelancers. Experienced freelancers realize what needs to happen and how to be professional, and if someone responds, what you need to do. And it's really just kind of an issue with newer freelancers. And once freelancers got a decent job history, it's really just not an issue. It's interesting to see what freelancer issues with clients are, just to kind of give a view from the opposite side. Feature creep is probably the biggest problem that they say, work keeps changing and additional work keeps being added to the contract that they didn't bid on. So that's probably the main one. No communication or disappearing before they release the funds is always another one. They're too busy and testing, that's what I hired you for. Vague requirements and vague feedback are also big issues. But yeah, as an arbitrator, I always go, well, why did you bid on a project that had vague requirements? Why didn't you set this up? It's your job too to ask questions and do things like that. I've never gotten a good answer for that. So another issue is our work's finished, the client continues but delays testing and kind of micromanaging too much work on reports versus doing the actual work. So copyright issues for graphics. If hiring someone to make a logo, make sure that it contains no third-party work, clip art, things like that. If that happens, someone else could own part of your logo, even if they use copyright-free stuff that you can find on the internet. Someone else can use it too, and you could have a competitor who looks very, very similar to what you got, and you've got no recourse because that stuff's already out there. If a freelancer is adding clip art or pictures to like a website, know where they got them from. You need to get proof of permission to use. Even better, get the images yourself, because that way you know where you got them from. Getty Images are pretty much the software patent lawyer of images, and what happens is they'll sue a site. Hey, we see that you've got one of our copyrighted images, and you need to pay us $1,000 for the use of that right because you were using it, and if you don't, we'll sue you, sort of thing. That does happen, and it happens a lot. It's you can actually do a Google search for Getty Images and see all of the fine people that they've sued. Once you do get your work from them, just kind of do detective work. Just run it through Google Image Search or TinEye, and make sure that the graphics don't exist anywhere else. If they do, huge red flag. This is somebody who's taken somebody else's work and passing it off as their own. If you're doing any logos or any graphics work, all that stuff should be original. For software, if the coder is going to use third-party stuff, make sure you know about it. Kind of talk about, like with components, you may get the source code, and then when you go to change it, you need to buy all this other additional expensive components and things like that. Or you could end up with a different license that you don't want, or not own the source code, or purchase a third-party library, or find that they've done this for somebody else. So for writing projects, same issue with graphics. Use Copyscape, Google, and Palladium to make sure that the work that you're receiving is original, because you don't want the same text appearing elsewhere on the web, especially if it's stuff you're hiring someone to pay to do. If you're hiring someone to like rewrite websites, which was kind of popular for a little bit there, those are copyright issues because those can be considered derivative works. Don't do that. There's all kinds of issues, and again, you have to keep a detective's eye and just look out. Trust them, but just verify, make sure that there aren't any issues. So here are some things that aren't problems generally that crop up in arbitration. The project is late. Most software projects are. That's not the problem. If you need it for a specific deadline, set that right up. at the very start. I need it by this deadline. If it doesn't meet this deadline, I'm not paying for it. I'm not working, and that you get their attention. Stuff comes in late all the time. All developers should be kind of aware of that. Freelancer is incompetent. They may be incompetent, but it's the work that's going to be looked at, or they oversold their skills. Again, it all breaks down to, all right, what in this project is wrong? What does the arbitrator need to look at to understand that they sold their skills or they're incompetent? It's the actual work. This last one has come up several times recently. The freelancer does the work, submits it, employer looks at it, has someone do a code review. Someone does the code review and goes, "Oh, this is crap. I can rewrite this for half price." And they go, "Oh, well, I'll do that." And they say to the freelancer, "Oh, I'm not taking this. The code reviewer said they can do this for half price." Well, what's happened is the code reviewer has looked at the code, and now this is a derivative work, and even if they don't use a line of code, this can be considered a derivative work that they've looked at. The two times this has happened up recently, the employer ended up paying both developers because the other person looked at it was the same person that was going to be rewriting the software. So that, and again, it's kind of, lots of people, look at code and you go, "Oh, I could have done that better." But you've looked at the code, you saw how that was done. So that's, something that you need to keep an eye out for. Just some common sense defensive tactics to help prevent problems. Always back up before giving work out. Don't use a vague contract. Kind of get all changes in writing, as we've discussed. If you have a phone call, summarize it up. Don't have a freelancer work on a live site, if at all possible. Don't give out your entire source code to a developer that you don't know very well, as always good advice. Don't pay in advance for work, if possible. This may or may not be possible, depending on the freelance side and the freelancer. And if you're going to not accept a project or just fire a freelancer for like an hourly project, kill their access first. Don't let them, don't leave it open. Fire them and leave it open. Blackmail situations, they come up every once in a while. It's rare, but they do happen. A situation where a worker holds the work hostage until they get paid. There's generally kind of websites where they lock the person out. They change the admin password, or they threaten to post the source code all over the internet, or cripple the website until they get paid. These people may be having cash flow problems, or they're sick of working with you and they don't like you. So again, just common sense tips: always back up before giving work out. Don't give out your only admin password. Make sure there's another admin account. Don't give out all of your source code. Have them work on pieces, or have them set up their own development server. And don't have the freelancer work on live site if at all possible. So basically, just kind of to summarize everything up, just post a well-defined project, do your due diligence when hiring a freelancer, make sure they've got everything they need, set them up for success, communicate often to prevent small problems from becoming bigger ones. If you're making changes to the contract, make sure that the freelancer understands and the modifications and agrees to complete them. Test. And if possible, leave appropriate feedback, good or bad, to help out other freelancer and potential clients. And like I said, thanks. These slides are available. It's in a PDF format, all of these slides. And I've also got a guide that goes into way more detail for $9.95 at the Employer's Guide. And it's available in PDF and Kindle formats. And we've got about 10 minutes for questions, so if you've got any questions, anybody?
In the past, I haven't done a lot related to hiring freelancers, but the two times that I hired someone to program something up for me, I didn't get the source until after acceptance. Mm-hmm. Is it that's part of the contract that you say, I expect to get the source first, so I can verify everything?
That's a good question. What Gianfranco said was when he hired freelancers, he didn't get the source until after he accepted the work. Generally, you can put that up in the project summary. Say, hey, you know, I expect to see the source code before I accept. You know, and you can have it, you know, and you can explain to them, you know, hey, I think everything looks great, and you know, I just want to see the source code, you know, right before I accept it. And you know, I'm assuming there's no problems. I know we did have an ASP member who did have trouble with that. They got the same sort of thing. They got the EXE. You know, everything looked great. They got the source code, and it was supposed to be in, I think, Delphi, and they got the work was done in .NET, and they ended up didn't quite go into arbitration because it was, you know, very obvious that the freelancer didn't do it right, because the title of the project was, you know, code this in Delphi. So you need to try to do that. You put in the project summary before you get it. And you know, if there's you can talk to the freelancer and try to work out something. You know, just and do it that way. So, other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a custom software developer.
Okay.
So I've never put myself on these sites because, like, even the one example you showed, that guy's working for $15 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
So that leads me to the question: are most of these developers on there from outside of the United States? They must be at that rate. There's no way they can survive here.
There's it's all over really. Like, you know, like I said, you know, that person may be working for $15 an hour, but there may be, you know, U.S.-based sites that are looking for U.S.-based developers, and they know that they're not going to get $15 an hour. They may be looking for somebody closer. You know, fixed price projects are also a good way to go. But yeah, if you're going to compete on price, you are going to lose, you know, as an American. But if you can show, hey, you know, this is, you know, I've been a developer for 20 years, you know, here's some of my, you have to differentiate on quality.
Do you see some developers in that mode, like a rates around $100 an hour? Is that fairly common out there?
It all depends on what type of project. I really don't see too much of the hourly stuff. I do mostly on the fixed price. But I'm sure that they are out there. But you know, again, it all depends on the type of work you're doing and the languages and things like that. So, other questions? Okay, thank you all.